We've been tracking this story for weeks now. It's going to be a crucial race. The Republican primary battle for U.S. Senate in Texas taking yet another unexpected turn. State Attorney General Ken Paxton wrote on social media yesterday he would consider dropping out of the runoff race against incumbent Senator John Cornyn if Senate Republican leaders, A, agree to abolish the filibuster, and B, pass the Save America Act, that voting bill declaring that he's committed to helping President Trump get it done. Paxton's offer is being seen as a political maneuver aimed at highlighting the reluctance of his opponent, Senator Cornyn, to eliminate the filibuster. Cornyn reiterated yesterday he supports the Save America Act legislation itself, but did not address the filibuster question. Both men are headed to a May 26th runoff after neither got more than 50% of the vote in Tuesday's primary. President Trump, for his part, weighed in on social media after the primary, stating he would issue an endorsement in the race soon, but added the candidate he does not endorse should drop out. It's widely expected that he endorses Cornyn. Who knows? Paxton initially insisted he would stay in the race regardless of Trump's choice. Trump then signaled irritation at that perceived defiance from Paxton, telling Politico, quote, "That's bad for him. Maybe that leads me to go the other direction." Joining us now, Matt Bartlett was a former U.S. State Department appointee during Trump's first term, Democratic strategist, host of Centered, the podcast on Substack, Louis Miranda. Big week for the political panel. A lot of stories for us to cover. We'll start in Texas. I think when you look at Ken Paxton trying to say nuke the filibuster, which members of both parties have faced pressure to do for years, Thune himself, the leader for Republicans in the Senate, saying, I'm not going to do that. Does this actually get Paxton where he's going, which is to Trump's endorsement? It kind of sounds like it's just a really easy way to annoy him.
Yeah, I mean, listen, building power in the Senate is an art, is a skill set. And it's even harder when you're not even a member of the Senate. What is this? I mean, this is, a hostage demand for someone who's running. It's preposterous, right? It's just kind of throwing stuff at the wall, a last gasp. And like you just said, I'm not sure that this is endearing to the president or to the MAGA base. If anything, I think this might just be enough's enough, and a Cornyn endorsement would be forthcoming. Paxton, exit stage right.
I mean, maybe. He also got 40% of the vote. I mean, I was down there. He has a ton of energy on his side, and I wonder for Democrats who are looking at this, already having to heal some of their wounds from a very intense primary, looking at Republicans who are basically going to spend the next 10 weeks potentially tearing themselves apart, fracturing their Republican coalitions, and yet Democrats are doing some wound healing as well. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, Democrats need to sit back and just let them do what they're going to do, and that's a great place to be. So, and Democrats have to feel optimistic about the energy that they saw in the primaries. Democrats outpaced Republicans in terms of voting in the primary in a record turnout year, which means that there is energy on the Democratic side. I think some of the warning signs are that you also had a much older vote than the average median age in Texas. And so clearly there's a lot of work to do to get young people engaged and motivated as well, because you're going to need them to turn out in much higher numbers in the general election. Yeah. But right now, sit back and enjoy the show, because Cornyn and Paxton are just really doing the work for us.
Yeah, I also think the other thing, and I remember asking Tellerico about this, that campaign is really looking to young voters. But at the same time, Jasmine Crockett dominated in polling among black voters. And I've seen Democratic strategists on the ground say black voters are the lifeblood of the Democratic Party. And yet now when black women or black leaders are coming out to lead, to be the standard bearer, voters and the establishment are saying no. I mean, how do you balance that?
Well, black women are the heart and soul of the Democratic Party. Yeah. And so I think that is going to be a challenge, because there is a sense of, and we were just talking about this, Taylor Cohen saying that they want our labor, but they don't want us in leadership positions. And after the Kamala Harris defeat, that's still very much the sense in the party. So there's wound healing that needs to happen. But look, Hispanics are also an interesting story from this election, which is that they turned out in huge numbers. If you look at the Democratic counties or the counties where Hispanics are a majority, Tallarico won by a much, much bigger percentage, something like 22 points versus 3% in the rest of the state. Yep. That bodes well for when you look at the swing of Hispanics that had happened during 2022, 2024. That's clearly run back because of the extremist agenda of the Republican Party, of the Trump immigration agenda.
I think that's exactly right. And I heard the immigration agenda be cited, Matt, when I was down there talking to voters. I had a Republican say, I've never asked for a Democratic ballot before, but I cannot continue living this way, seeing the immigration agenda play out. And now you have Kristi Noem being ousted, replaced by Markwayne Mullin. Can you talk about the impact of this and then politically what it says that the administration finally found its limit after saying for a year plus, no scalps, enduring controversies, they finally found a reason to oust someone?
Yeah, I mean, like you just said, the president has had, a superpower of illegal immigration, for over a decade now. And then it quickly became a super problem. Yeah. Under Kristi Noem's leadership or lack thereof, this was just a true mix of incompetence, of corruption, of a personal narrative. This was like scenes you would watch, Gangs of New York meets the Beverly Hillbillies, meets How Stella Got Her Groove Back. It was just preposterous.
I love the energy.
Yeah.
And again, hey, you pay taxes, I pay taxes. I got some questions about $250 million of ads, about private planes. What was this? Because it certainly wasn't on the work. It seemed about the person. Yes, finally she's gone, and we'll see what happens.
I think it's also the ads itself, right? And as someone who worked in the administration and also who reads the tea leaves of what people's ambitions might be next, that is a huge way, and Senator Kennedy said this, of building your name ID on a taxpayer dime. How many politicians would have loved doing that, A? But B, is that the thing that ultimately got her too crosswise with the president? None of the enforcement stuff, because we know that that's always central to the agenda. What do you think?
A mix of both. Let's just be honest here.
Okay.
The president can be crazy, but he's not dumb. He saw the scenes out of Minnesota, quickly got rid of, the bovino. Right. So understood this. That's part of it. But to your point, it seems as if open source reporting is a lot of this was the personal drama, the affair, allegedly, with someone who she worked with at DHS. So it wasn't necessarily the policy, it was the personal side. In the end, I think it was all of it. Yeah. And now she's gone on to a new job as the Shield of America or whatever this new notion is here. Good riddance. We'll see what
creation,
happens.
Yeah, the Hail Hydra moment for Kristi Noem.
Does sound a bit like a Marvel thing.
It really
Agents
does.
of S.H.I.E.L.D.
It really does. But I think the biggest problem here is not just Kristi Noem, it is the policies. And so, Mayorkas got impeached for a hell of a lot less, frankly, for just doing his job.
Because you worked at DHS, right? I'm sure you still talk to people there. What was the mood during the Noem tenure?
The mood is terrible, and the mood is incredibly under attack because the workforce, just as it's been across the federal government, federal workers have been under attack inside DHS, too. She did not get along with Border Patrol leadership. She did not get along with a lot of the career folks who are there to do a job because they're pushing very much a political agenda that disregards the norms that have ruled DHS. DHS has always had a tug of war between national security and civil liberties. And that tug of war is important to its existence. You have to respect both sides of it. And she didn't do that. But it's not just her. It's Stephen Miller and the orders that he's giving DHS. It's just a culture of ignoring things like reasonable use of force. And so I think, the funding debate still has to focus on reining in some of these abuses because putting in Markwayne Mullin is not going to change the fundamental problem with the fact that they're ignoring the Fourth Amendment, the First Amendment in many cases, too, the 10th Amendment in terms of how they work with the states. So there's just a lot of issues in terms of, and it's not just training. Alex Preddy, the officers who shot him, they were not new. They were not recent hires. Neither was the officer who shot Renee Good, who had been on the force for 10 years and had been at Border Patrol before that. So this is not just a training issue. The reality is here that the rot goes really deep. And look, it might be time to just, dismantle ICE and place it back under the Department of Justice where they can get some actual oversight.
And I think that's obviously a larger question. If we see the House change hands, ultimately Noem the first one out. Final quick last word to you.
I mean, if the House changed its hands or when? I mean, this is kind of from a Republican standpoint, a done deal. And again, I think you'll see a lot.
You think that seeing generic ballot and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, again, 2024, massive year for Republicans. We lost 2 seats in the House. I'm not sure next year is going to be better. So, yeah, I would expect the House to go, and I would expect a lot more oversight.
Yeah, and of course, when you get into the redistricting battles, which are still playing out in some states, just the number of seats that even have the potential to flip shrink every single year, and every single time maps are redrawn. So it just makes flipping that much more difficult, and it keeps margins really tight, which has been the story of this Congress as well. Matt Bartlett, Louis Miranda, thank you both for joining us. Absolute pros for the news cycle this week.
Thank you.
But stick